The old rabbi sat in silence as the last candle burned low. His study was filled with the scent of cedar and ink, and shelves heavy with sacred texts whispered the weight of 1,000 years. Outside, the city still moved, merchants closing their stalls, lights flickering in windows, but here, time stood still. A young man entered quietly, his clothes plain, his eyes restless. "Rabbi," he said, "I've worked my whole life, yet I have nothing. Others have riches, homes, and rest. Tell me, what am I doing wrong?" The rabbi smiled, not with pity, but with recognition. "You are not doing wrong, my son," he said softly. "You are doing without awareness." He reached for an ancient leather book, its pages worn and yellowed. "The blessing of wealth," he continued, "is not in the hands but in the heart. You can work endlessly, but if you labor from fear, your hands close. When they close, blessings cannot enter." The young man frowned. "So, I must simply believe?" The rabbi shook his head. "Belief is not enough. You must speak the truth into movement. Every prayer is a door, but most knock without saying their name." He leaned forward, his eyes sharp as fire. "There is a prayer, one that my teacher called the Song of Provision. Say it once with a pure heart, and the doors that were sealed will open as if they were never closed." The young man trembled. "What does it say?" The rabbi closed his eyes and recited slowly, "Blessed is the source of all. You are the giver and I am the vessel. As you pour into me, let me pour into others. What I receive, I multiply through gratitude, and what I give returns to me purified by kindness." The room seemed to grow brighter as he spoke. "Say these words once," he whispered, "but mean them with your soul. Do not beg from heaven, thank it before it gives. Gratitude turns requests into reality." The young man fell to his knees, tears streaming down his face. He repeated the prayer until his voice shook. That night, he slept peacefully for the first time in years. In the morning, his world began to change, not through miracles of gold raining from the sky, but through people drawn to him, doors that once ignored him now opening with ease. Within months, his small shop flourished. Within years, he built homes, fed families, and clothed the poor. But when asked about his success, he would always smile and say, "It wasn't business that made me rich. It was remembrance." And so, the rabbi's words spread quietly from mouth to mouth, across cities and oceans, until even the wealthy began to whisper them again before sleep, "Blessed is the source of all. You are the giver and I am the vessel. What I receive, I multiply through gratitude, and what I give returns to me purified by kindness." Those who said it once with truth in their hearts discovered what the rabbi meant, that the greatest secret of wealth is not to ask for more, but to awaken to what is already pouring into you every moment from the unseen hand of the divine. Years later, the young man, now a gray-haired philanthropist, returned to the same old study where it had all begun. The rabbi's chair was empty, but the scent of cedar and parchment still lingered. He placed a golden coin on the rabbi's desk, whispering, "For the one who showed me that true wealth has nothing to do with gold." His eyes filled with tears as he remembered the night that changed everything, the night he learned to thank instead of to beg. In time, people began to call him the billionaire who gave more than he owned. Every deal he made, every project he built, began with the same small ritual. He would close his eyes, place his hand over his heart, and whisper, "Blessed is the source of all. You are the giver and I am the vessel." And somehow, miracles always followed. Once, a journalist asked him during an interview, "How can saying a few words bring so much fortune?" He smiled softly. "Because those words don't change the world," he said. "They change you. When you are open, heaven has somewhere to send its gifts." He began teaching the prayer to his workers, his family, and even strangers who came to him with nothing. Say it once, he would tell them, but not like a wish, like a thank you for a blessing that's already coming. Soon stories spread, a man buried in debt suddenly finding a forgotten opportunity. A widow whose small bakery began to thrive, a boy whose sick mother recovered after they prayed together. Each swore it wasn't luck. They said something unseen had moved for them, something vast and merciful. And one night, after years of giving, the man dreamt of the rabbi. The old sage stood in light brighter than dawn, his face serene. "You kept your promise," he said. "You became the vessel, not the owner. And now the blessing flows through you as freely as air." The man bowed deeply and asked, "Rabbi, will the prayer always work for others too?" The rabbi smiled. "Always, as long as they remember this truth: wealth cannot be possessed. It can only be trusted to the grateful." When the man awoke, he wrote the prayer on parchment and sent copies to every village and city he had ever visited. At the bottom he added a final line in trembling ink. "Say this once, not to get more, but to remember who gives. That is when miracles begin." From that day on, people all over the world began their mornings the same way, with a deep breath, a whisper of gratitude, and the quiet miracle that follows every heart that finally understands that to give thanks is to open the gates of abundance. Decades passed, and the man who once wept before a poor rabbi became a legend. His name was spoken in cities he never visited, in markets he never built, in prayers of people he never met. But he left behind no monuments of stone, only words, and the memory of a heart that learned to give before receiving. He built schools and orphanages, hospitals and shelters, but never allowed his name to be written on their walls. "Do not remember me," he would say. "Remember the source." His greatest joy was to see the prayer being whispered by strangers at dawn, "Blessed is the source of all. You are the giver and I am the vessel." In his final years, he returned to the same village where his journey had begun. The rabbi's old study had become a small synagogue, the candlelight replaced by electric lamps, but the same peace still lingered. He sat among children learning Torah and smiled, realizing that wealth, once a heavy dream, had become something light, something that flowed through him, not for him. One evening, as the sun set and painted gold across the windows, a young beggar came to his door. "Sir," the boy said shyly, "I heard you have a secret prayer that makes people rich. Will you teach it to me?" The old man took the boy's trembling hands and smiled gently. "Of course," he said. "But understand this, the prayer doesn't make you rich. It reminds you that you already are." He recited it once more, slowly, the same way the rabbi had long ago. "Blessed is the source of all. You are the giver and I am the vessel. As you pour into me, let me pour into others. What I receive, I multiply through gratitude, and what I give returns to me purified by kindness." The boy repeated it after him, his voice uncertain at first, then stronger. "Now," said the old man, "go share it with one person in need. Every time someone says it with truth, the world grows a little lighter." That night, as he lay in his bed, the old man felt the weight of his years lift. He closed his eyes and whispered the prayer one last time, not for wealth, not for health, but for the world that had taught him the greatest secret. That abundance is not in what you gather, but in what you release. By morning, he was gone, his face serene, his lips still curved in a smile of gratitude. And when the villagers found him, they buried him beside the old rabbi under a cedar tree. On his gravestone, they carved only 6 words. He thanked, and the heavens answered. And from that day on, wherever that prayer was spoken, people felt something shift, an unseen peace, a quiet opening, as if a door somewhere beyond the stars had begun to swing open again. Years after his passing, stories of the billionaire who prayed became timeless parables told across generations. In cities where gold gleamed and in villages where bread was scarce, people spoke of the man who had turned gratitude into power. No one could quite agree whether he had truly been rich, or if rich meant something different in his world, something measured not in coins, but in light. Travelers claimed miracles still happened near his grave. A merchant said he once prayed there before dawn, and his failing business was revived within days. A mother swore that after reciting the rabbi's words by candlelight, her child was healed. A farmer, once near ruin, whispered the prayer before his empty field, and by spring, it was covered in wheat taller than any in memory. But those who knew the secret understood, it was never the words alone. It was the state of the heart behind them, that moment of surrender when the soul says, I already have everything, because he is still giving. Years turned into centuries, and the prayer spread beyond faiths, borders, and names. It was written on walls, stitched into cloth, hidden in books of wisdom. And somewhere, perhaps beyond this world, the rabbi and his student watched as the light they had kindled grew brighter with each voice that spoke those sacred words. One night, a poor craftsman in another land, unaware of the story's origin, sat alone in his workshop, surrounded by broken tools and unpaid bills. He closed his eyes and whispered the only prayer he knew, "Blessed is the source of all." The air around him seemed to soften. His heartbeat slowed. For the first time, he did not ask. He thanked. And something invisible began to change, not in his shop, but inside him. His fear melted into calm, his exhaustion into purpose. The next morning, he rose early, fixed his tools, worked with peace, and by evening, a stranger had come to commission his craft. When asked later how his fortune turned, he only said, I stopped asking why me and started saying thank you. From that day, the prayer lived once more, passed from hand to hand, from heart to heart, until it became what it was always meant to be, a key to awakening, not abundance. For those who speak it with sincerity still discover the same truth the Rabbi revealed long ago. Wealth is not what you own. It's what flows through you when you remember the giver. Generations later, the legend had grown so vast that few even remembered the rabbi's name or the student who became the vessel of his wisdom. But the prayer itself endured, quietly reshaping lives wherever it was spoken. It was carved into old doors in Morocco, whispered in synagogues and mosques alike, sung by fishermen before setting sail, and even printed on scraps of parchment carried by travelers across deserts. No one claimed to own it. It belonged to anyone humble enough to mean it. In a bustling modern city, far removed from cedar trees and candlelit studies, a young entrepreneur named Daniel sat in his empty office late one night. His company had collapsed, his debts towered, and his faith had thinned to dust. In desperation, he searched online for something, anything, to ease his heart. Among endless distractions, one video caught his eye. Its title read, The Billionaire Rabbi's Forgotten Prayer for Miracles. Curious, he clicked. The video was simple, no music, no production, just an elderly voice reading softly. Blessed is the source of all. You are the giver and I am the vessel. As you pour into me, let me pour into others. As Daniel listened, something ancient stirred within him, as if every syllable carried a memory he didn't know he had. For the first time in years, he didn't feel panic or hunger for success, only stillness. He repeated the words aloud, his voice shaking, What I receive, I multiply through gratitude, and what I give returns to me purified by kindness. He closed his laptop, knelt beside his desk, and whispered, I don't want riches, I just want peace. The next morning, he woke before sunrise and began again, the same prayer, spoken slowly. That day, he treated his employees with warmth instead of fear. He smiled at strangers. he gave away what little he had left. Within weeks, small changes began: an unexpected job offer, a friend forgiving an old debt, opportunities arriving without chase. But Daniel understood this wasn't magic. It was alignment. When he stopped grasping, everything he needed began to flow. Years later, he became wealthy again, but differently this time. His company grew on trust. His hands open as they had once been clenched. And on his office wall hung the same words that had saved him, framed in gold. "You are the giver, and I am the vessel." Every evening, before leaving work, he would turn off the lights, touch the frame, and whisper softly, "Thank you for letting me serve." And so the chain continued: the rabbi to the student to the boy to the world to Daniel, all repeating the same lesson, carried through centuries like a spark that refuses to die. The true secret of wealth is remembrance. When you stop chasing the gift and begin honoring the giver, everything you seek starts seeking you. Years rolled forward like waves, and the old prayer found new life in the digital age. What had once been whispered in candlelight was now shared in billions of screens, translated into dozens of tongues. Some called it the wealth mantra, others the miracle verse, but those who truly understood knew it was not about money, it was about awakening. Daniel, now old and gray, stood before a crowd at a charity event he had founded. Cameras flashed, reporters waited, but he spoke softly, the same calm tone that once carried across a small office filled with debt. "I used to think wealth meant ownership," he said. "Now I know it means overflow. Whatever you hold too tightly dies in your grip. Whatever you release with love, grows." He paused, eyes glistening with gratitude. The rabbi who wrote these words centuries ago didn't build empires, he built hearts. And that's why his prayer still works. It was never meant to create millionaires. It was meant to create vessels. Then he placed his hand over his heart and said the words once more for all to hear. "Blessed is the source of all. You are the giver and I am the vessel. As you pour into me, let me pour into others. What I receive, I multiply through gratitude, and what I give returns to me purified by kindness." The hall fell silent. Even the cameras stopped clicking. For a moment, everyone felt it, that invisible warmth, that stirring in the chest, as if the unseen world had leaned closer. After the event, a young woman approached Daniel. Her voice trembled as she said, "Sir, I don't have wealth to give. I only have words." Daniel smiled gently. "Then give them," he said. "Every kind word is a seed. Wealth begins with the courage to give what you already have." That night, she wrote the prayer on her mirror and began reading it every morning before leaving for work. Within months, her life changed, not because of miracles that appeared, but because of the peace that settled within her. She started a movement online, the Vessel Challenge, where people from around the world shared stories of what happened when they practiced gratitude instead of fear. Millions joined. And so the chain grew again. Somewhere beyond all names, in the unseen realm of light, the rabbi smiled. The same light that had flickered in his study now flowed through countless hearts across the earth, the rich, the poor, the lost, the found, all whispering the same words of gratitude. And if one listened closely, beneath the hum of the world, one could still hear his voice echo softly through time. Do not ask for miracles, become one. The moment you thank the giver, you already have everything you prayed for. Years later, when Daniel had returned to dust and his name had faded from headlines, the movement he began lived on like a quiet pulse beneath the noise of the world. The prayer no longer belonged to one man, one faith, or one nation, it belonged to humanity. It was carved into subway walls, whispered by monks at dawn, printed on hospital walls, engraved on the backs of watches, spoken by lovers before sleep, murmured by workers before long days. It became the silent bridge between gratitude and grace. One night, centuries later, a child sat beside a dying fire with her grandmother. The girl asked softly, "Grandma, what does it mean to be rich?" The old woman smiled, her eyes warm like the flame. "It means," she said, "to know that everything you have is a gift and to live as if you were chosen to pass it on." She took the girl's hand, placed it on her chest, and whispered, "Repeat after me. Blessed is the source of all. You are the giver and I am the vessel. As you pour into me, let me pour into others. What I receive, I multiply through gratitude, and what I give returns to me purified by kindness." The child repeated the words carefully, then smiled. "It sounds like magic." The grandmother chuckled softly. "It is," she said. "But not the kind that changes the world, the kind that changes you, until you change the world." Outside, snow began to fall, slow, silent, infinite, and the fire's glow flickered across the old woman's face. She closed her eyes, feeling peace fill the room, the same peace the rabbi had once known, the same light passed from one grateful soul to another across endless generations. Somewhere beyond the stars, perhaps, the rabbi's voice still whispered in the unseen. When you thank the giver, you become the gift. When you open your hands, heaven fills them. When you open your heart, the world is made new. And as the candle burned low, the child repeated the prayer one last time before sleep, not knowing she had joined a chain of light stretching through 1,000 years, all the way back to one humble teacher who had discovered the greatest truth of all. That miracles of wealth begin not with asking, but with remembering.